On a high note. So we have a talk by the workshop speaker himself today, Lakshmi Shankar, and tomorrow we have Lakshmi hosting Girish Matrabhutam for a fireside chat. So very happy to introduce Lakshmi. Lakshmi is the former VP of Product Strategy for Google Search, and he was part of the Google-wide AI task force responsible for the Google's response to OpenAI's ChatGPT, Microsoft's Bing, and so on. He was also the product lead for the launch of the Search Generative Experience, which was Google's first AI offering at I/O 2023. Lakshmi is an engineer and a product leader with more than 20 years of experience in technology, consumer, internet space. He has patents. He was previously at IBM and so on, and Ernst & Young. And he's also developed products, scaled diverse teams, and built businesses that have created global impact. He's a graduate of software engineering from Imperial College, London, and the Sloan Fellow from Stanford. He is passionate about disruptive technologies and, well, of course, AI and entrepreneurship, and very committed to lecturing at WSAI to make sure that we get our students globally competitive. So really thankful to Lakshmi for having spared his time. Over to you, Lakshmi.
All right. Let's just check if the mic is working. Just checking. Can everybody hear me? Right at the back? Okay. There are lots of familiar faces from my class, so good that all of you have come for this bonus lecture. And then there are some familiar faces from my cohort 1, last year's class. So welcome to those folks. And then there are some new folks who have not yet seen, and so welcome. Thank you so much for your time. Okay, so this is actually lecture 12 as part of a larger course that I ran that Professor Karthik mentioned. And so a lot of the things that you're going to hear makes a lot of sense when you've gone to my other 11 lectures. But I will try to make it as much as possible relevant to those folks who have not been part of the larger course. But I'll also mention about that course that we have, because we are going to be running it again. And if any of you are interested, you're more than welcome to register. It's part of the Wadhwani School of AI and Data Science. Okay, so what are we going to be covering over the next hour? We're going to be talking about AI in 2025. So some of this is about demystifying, and some of this is about myth busting. And what I want to leave you with, hopefully at the end of this hour, is hopefully some understanding of tangible opportunities that are worth pursuing. What these are not product ideas. What these are not solutions. What these are phenomenal market opportunities, problems that are worth solving. That these are still some of them on the research helm, and that if you are able to spend your time dwelling in that problem space, I'm confident on the other side, you'll walk away with something that is worth building, and it's meaningful. Okay, so we're going to talk about what to build, why it matters, and how to actually win. I think you already heard my quick intro, so I will spare this just to say that at the end of the day, I'm as curious as you are. I had the pleasure of building an AI product that is used by billions of users every day in AI overview. But at the same time, I'm now coming here as a student as well, because this space is going so fast that I'm having to spend at least a couple of hours each day just to keep up. And so a lot of the things that I'm sharing with you are things that we observe, that I observe, and hopefully I can convince you that these are actually worth pursuing over the course of this hour. So I'm going to start with basically telling you about the State of the Union. Okay? Why am I starting with this slide about what are the biggest investments in the US in 2024? Number one, US still continues to be the largest AI market in the world. Okay? US is the harbinger of currently AI technical and thought leadership. So studying the market is a good way to try to actually understand where the current pace car is. Where is the current leader? That does not mean to say that US has the right to win. Okay? We have the right to win in India. which is why we're doing this course, which is why we're having these conversations. But it's always important to have that foresight, to understand where is the pace car. So this chart is essentially showing you where are all of the largest rounds of investment in 2024. Okay, and so you'll see things like this gray bubble, logistics, digital AI, cybersecurity, semiconductors, physical AI, etc., etc. Okay, this is data. You can get this data, but this is not insight. To get to that insight, what you need to do is, as Wayne Gretzky, the famous ice hockey player, said, skate to where the puck is going, not where the puck is today or where it has been in the past. That is what today's lecture is all about. Where is the puck going? Okay? Because if you are skating to where the puck is going, the puck has already gone there. So I'm trying to instill a sense of foresight and give you some insight. Okay? So there are 7 key trends that I'm going to be talking about, and then we'll delve into each one as to why it matters. The first, hopefully something that you all have heard of, Agentic AI. Okay? I'm not going to try and explain technically why it's important. I'm just going to tell you where the opportunities are today in Agentic AI. Number 2, service as a software. Okay? This is deliberately the flip of software as a service. Okay? Now it's about service, which is human labor and human labor displacement. Where are all the areas are we seeing human labor being displaced? Why does that matter? Because you're no longer just going after the software TAM, you're also going after the service TAM, the people TAM. Okay, TAM being target addressable market. Okay, it's not just people who want to buy software, it's also the people who are paying the salaries to the people who are using that software. And so how can you use AI to disrupt both software and the people? Okay? Number 3, AI and infra tools. There are still, to date, if you take nothing else, this is the area that is growing the fastest. There are still so much opportunities here that we'll delve into the few that are most exciting. Okay? Then it's insights from unstructured data. So we'll talk about essentially what is unstructured data, what are all the insights that needs to be gleaned, that hasn't been gleaned, and why that is actually a fundamental problem that, if solved, can actually impact multiple sectors and industries. Then AI SOR, system of record. Okay, if you can reimagine software where AI is at the heart of it, it's not just the operating system, it's also the database, it is also the fundamental source of truth. When that happens, what can you reimagine? How can you reimagine enterprise software? So we're going to talk about that. What is AX, agentic experience, or AI experience? Depends how you want to think about today or in the future. Then on-device AI, sometimes called as edge AI. Okay, so we'll talk about basically some of the opportunities that exist there. And then finally, real-world models. Okay, and a subset within that is the physical AI. Okay, we'll talk about that. So those are the fundamental 7 trends that if I am today an entrepreneur, if I am today a product builder, if today I am the world-class thinker in AI, these are the places I'm starting. This is where the puck is going. Okay, this is where you're not too late. Okay, let's go. Let's go into each one. First one, agentic AI. So fundamentally, what is actually happening? What's been happening is that we started with business process modeling, and we had a whole bunch of RPA where we had predictive ML. Okay, then that was through the 90s. Then we had the breakthroughs of the, that's through the 20s, sorry, and then we had in 2022, arguably, the moment of ChatGPT-3, which gave birth to generative AI. And immediately you saw a whole bunch of co-pilots being created. Okay? But what is actually happening today is the switch between generative AI and agentic AI and move over from co-pilots to autopilots. Okay? And what's going to happen over time is going to be general purpose AI and robotic AI and much, much more real-world applications of AI. That is the evolution, and this is where we are today. And why has that been possible? Fundamentally because of the model breakthroughs. So what has happened is, to get us to this point, the evolution of the AI models have started with factuality, extensibility, domain adaptation, multimodality, infinite context, and task completion, and that enabled us to get to this point today. But to truly enable us to have agentic AI, you're going to start to see much more about reasoning, infinite memory, models that can reflect, models that can go after tasks and higher order goals. And you're going to get into, in order to get into the robotic AI, spatial and temporal intelligence, so understanding gravity, understanding friction, understanding time, and then real-world relevance. Can I impact something that's happening in the real world based on what I understand? Today, models can't do that, okay, in real time. And then preemptive thought. Can I actually fundamentally come up with something that is truly original before the event happens? Okay? And then you go into multisensory learning, which is all about essentially the extension of multimodality. Okay? Everything around me, every time, all at once, I'm understanding, I'm making sense of it, and I'm reacting to it. Okay? That is going to be the future. Today, ChatGPT 3, 4 is here. Okay? This is where we're going. Whether ChatGPT and OpenAI wins, Gemini wins, Claude wins, I don't know. But these are the fundamental building blocks that needs to be built, okay? And we will go past language transformer models, we'll go past image and diffusion models, voice models, and we'll go into these types of models that needs to be created, okay, across all dimensions. Okay, with me so far? Yes. Yes. That's right. That's right.
So what is the significant shift? Because it's more than goal optimization.
Yes.
It's actually solving for a systems kind of solution rather than a human.
Correct. Where every node is essentially AI talking to AI, solving larger problems. And human, where the larger question, I think the question behind that question is, what is the role of humans in that world? And I think this is why in the class that we had, we talk about, we moved from a world of human-led, tech-enabled, to tech-enabled, to tech-led and human-enabled, to a world of tech-led. What is the role of human? I don't know. I don't know. That's a great question. I don't know. TBD. You are building the future. I'm merely pointing out the opportunities. Okay? So I think let's define some of the terms here, because there's multiple definitions. So fundamentally, I define agentic AI as AI agents that can autonomously perform complex tasks with minimal input. I'm trying to keep the definition very, very simple. They make decisions for us, they use tools, and they can adapt to real-world information in real time. Okay? An example. Let's apply an AI example. So a sales agent who can automatically prospect leads, send personalized emails, schedule the meetings, learn and refine based on those responses is an example of a junior sales AI agent. Okay? This, today, is happening. If you're building this today, you're about 18 months too late. The market has moved on. Okay? So then, why is there so much excitement? Because fundamentally, just enabling AI agents is at least a $200 billion opportunity globally. And it's been rising and rising and rising through the proliferation of software and AI agents. Okay? In fact, it's not software that's eating the world, it's AI agents that are eating software. And if you then think about the market opportunity, where it's actually in the areas of AI agents platforms, AI frameworks, AI agents that are enabling you to do productivity, customer service, voice agents, and the list actually goes on. And the list just goes on and on and on. I'll just go to the next slide. You are not meant to read this. This is long. This is meant to be to show to you. It's been a massive proliferation. And you can just see AI agents in the world of recruiting, coding, web agents, observability, education, lead generation, software testing, music AI agents. I'll stop. Okay? So this is why there's so much excitement towards AI agents. But if you think about, okay, how do I actually get a feel for where the market is? I encourage you to use products like today, Emergent. Okay, we talked about Emergent is essentially completely enabling any person with any level of technical capability to automatically operate as the CTO of their organization. You can, through prompt, through essentially vibe coding, build any applications, greenfield or brownfield. Okay, and do front-end logic, middleware logic, back-end logic, all through prompt. Guys, this is the capability today. They are the fastest growing vibe platform in the world. Okay, and so here's an example of essentially agentic AI in action in the world of coding. And so where are the opportunities? The opportunities is essentially going to be still in customer service. Why? Because it's a massive market. Okay, the Sierras of the world, yes, they're leading the pack, but there's still so much opportunities. Sales and marketing, IT services, financial trading. If there is something that can help me do the trading for me, I'll buy it today. If there is something that is trained on proprietary data of every single Berkshire Hathaway, Charles Munger, and Warren Buffett's trading over the last 35 years that can help me do better trading or as good at trading as those two, I would buy it today. You would buy it tomorrow. Okay? That's why there's such amount of demand. Okay? And then the key consideration is don't build horizontal. If you guys are thinking, great, this makes sense, I want to go build this, don't build it horizontal. In other words, don't build something that can apply to multiple industries. Why? Too many workflows, too many touch points. You don't understand deeply, intimately, the pain point of the customer because there's too many customers. So build vertically. Choose a niche, narrow area to build. And then always think about the reinforcement learning part, human in the loop, because you have to assume the models won't be perfect. Models aren't. Okay? And then think about moats. We talk about this all the time in my class. Differentiation and defensibility has to be by design. It's not an afterthought. Okay? And in the world of agents, it's all about how well do you know the domain that you're building in? If you're the person who's trying to build in financial trading, you better be the expert in financial trading. If you're building it in legal automation, you better be as good as Harvey to succeed. Okay? And then finally, product craft. And this is the thing we talk about a lot in my class. Product craft is when you build a product that is so not just useful, reliable, functional, but delightful. Fundamentally, you use it, you're like, wow. Think about the products that you loved. Open up your phone, you think about the apps that you constantly use. You use them because fundamentally the craft in that product is world class. So if you want to win now in agentic AI, not only do you need to choose the right area, you also need to get the right considerations, but nail product craft. Okay? All right, I will leave plenty of questions at the end as well. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to carry on to the next trend so that we cover the ground, and then I'll stay back if needs be if you have more questions. Is that okay? Okay, great, fantastic. All right, let's go. The next one, service as a software. Okay? What do we mean by that? The definition is AI that delivers complete services autonomously, replacing the need for humans. So this is beyond the traditional SaaS. AI here is not just a tool, it is the very service. Okay? And you don't know the difference. So for example, an AI marketing manager can completely autonomously analyze the data, make the campaign decisions, and do this completely autonomously. For example, hey, I want to basically figure out how much I need to, the goal I have is essentially top of the funnel growth on my app to be 10,000 people every single day. You go figure if it's Google Ads, you go figure if it's YouTube ads, you go figure if you need to go into Facebook groups or WhatsApp groups. I don't care. You figure. And you tell me the 10,000 people that need to come at the top of my funnel. Okay? And so what has actually happened? Previously, the humans were using software, and we were using YouTube, we were using Google AdWords, we're using Facebook to actually use part human, part software to solve the problem. But tomorrow, you're basically hiring AI to take care of the human part as well as the software part. It's oblivious to you. You just care about the outcome. 10,000 people at the top of my funnel. Okay? Why is this exciting? It's scary if you're that human. I definitely will tell you that. But why is it exciting for you as a product builder? Because today, the ROI has been calculated on the software part. Tomorrow, the ROI for the buyer is going to be calculated on the software and the human you're going to displace. So if I'm paying $10,000 a month for a person who's actually doing my brand strategy, tomorrow, part of that 10,000 is going towards my software because I've completely automated this. Okay? And so, if you then zoom out, and I apologize, this picture hasn't come out that well, but I'll read all the numbers. If you zoom out, what is the market opportunity? Guys, last slide I talked about for just AI agents was 200 billion. For service as a software, the market opportunity today, if there was a solution, is 4 trillion. How does that number make up? You make it up as fundamentally everything that's actually been sitting on cloud before, everything that is previously was automated, plus all the incremental human displaced. Essentially, you're taking out every layer of the stack. And you add it up in terms of today's spend, globally, it stands at 4 trillion.
Isn't the risk of this that, the agents will commoditize themselves?
Yes.
That's what market forces do.
Absolutely.
So 4 trillion becomes a billion, becomes 400 million.
Over time. Over time. Over time, it's inevitable. Excellent point. Over time, as we have learned with history, over time, things become commoditized, i.e., the only thing that differentiates is price, because they all pretty much do the same thing, the definition of commodity. Okay? Yes, but are we there today? No. So we're going to be looking at this over the next maybe 15 years. But today, it's about your opportunity. Where would you start? Look at this. Okay? And then the other thing I'll say to you is, okay, Lakshmi, I get it. Which are the areas that are worth going after? Well, let's look at where do we spend global TAM. We spend globally on IT and software development, the entirety of TCSs, Wipros, Accenture, anybody who's basically your mom, your dad who does technology, mom and pop shops, all come under here. You spend roughly, the world spends $500 billion in global software development, okay? Of which 70% is people costs. And 30% is actually software that they're using under the hood, okay? So today, if I can build the world's best, okay, software developer, I would actually start going after a large chunk of this. Okay? And then you can work your way down. Business process outsourcing, knowledge process outsourcing, so on and so forth. Look for where the salary time is highest. Start there. You play the odds in your favor. Okay. Then, let me give you an example. Okay, SpendFlow went after the oldest of business processes that exist. Here's an example of a company that's going after business process outsourcing. What do we outsource? What do most of the companies outsource? They outsource the very thing. They outsource outsourcing. They outsource the process of actually procuring people that you can get rid of and deliver services for you. Yeah? And so what they did is, man, I can basically create an entire AI product that enables you to understand what do you want to procure, intake to procure, and actually manage your procurement process entirely. Why do you need humans? SpendFlow, one of the fastest growing service as a software companies. All these examples are not US companies, they're Indian founders. People like you, me, who see this and who are building this. That's the entire purpose of this class, is to inspire minds, that this is possible. These are the opportunities. Okay, so where do I go? I would start with anywhere where there's AI-driven IT. Today, the opportunities still are in the IT, healthcare ops that you saw on that list, and data processing. These have not been disrupted largely. Things you need to bear in mind, okay? Still, same as before, there are far too many errors, far too many errors. So design with human in the loop, reinforcement learning again. Okay, secondly, you have to think about which processes do you actually deeply understand so that you don't get disintermediated by another software which owns that relationship and understands the process better than you. Let me explain. You're trying to build a process that can actually do procurement management. Well, there could be, if you don't understand the business process and if you don't manage the relationship with the customer, somebody else can build spend flow too and actually intermediate you, just push you down. That's the risk. That's the risk. So you have to own the business process, you have to own the proprietary data, and most importantly, you have to understand the customer relationships if you're going to build in this space. That's what world-class product builders do. Okay, a few other things. There is an opportunity to go into a brand new type of pricing model, which AI fundamentally unlocks. This has been around for a while, but not mass adopted, which is not pricing by seat, but pricing by outcome. In other words, if you can help me procure something at a better price than I was able to get it through my humans and software, then let's split the difference. Okay? This is brand new, guys. This has not been thought of before as how to think about pricing structures. People have been thinking seats. ChatGPT has introduced us to tokens, consumption. Now we're getting into outcomes. Why? Because that is what humans use software for, to derive outcomes. Okay? Let's move on. Number 3, AI infra and tools. I mentioned to you, this is where the rainbow continues to have lots and lots of gold on the other side. Okay? This is where there's the largest opportunity in the market. Today, tomorrow, probably for the next 10, 15 years. Why? Because there's so much action happening above you, application layer, so much action happening below you at the chips and the serving layer. Okay? Anybody who's building that middleware is going to make hay because the sun is going to shine for the next 15 years, at least. So let's understand where. Where is the sun shining? Fundamentally, when I talk about AI tools and infrastructure, let's define it. Tools, platforms, and infra for building, deploying, and scaling AI applications. Okay? This is that middleware. Okay? Think of it as picks and shovels. Things that are basically put together to help you actually enable developers to build. So fundamentally, these may not be consumer-facing. These may not be even the C-suite facing or business folks facing or even engineers facing. These are typically engineers, yes, but developers. They are developer facing because they are the people who are building these applications, taking advantage of the underlying serving infrastructure and the chip layer. So your customer, if you're building here, are developers. Okay? And so, example, MCP. Everybody's heard of MCP A2A. All of these are protocols that are still being defined on how fundamentally application or agents need to talk to each other. So in this case, MCP is basically a layer that can enable you to retain, retrieve, and update context during interactions. Let me give you an example. So fundamentally, tomorrow there is going to be a world in which you're going to open your phone and say, hey, let me go book a holiday in the Maldives. What's going to happen is that there's going to be an agent that is closest to you that's going to deeply understand all of your purchases, all of your preferences, and it's going to know all of the infinite contexts in which you've interacted and everywhere you've stayed with infinite memory. That's going to talk to Make My Trip agent, who's going to then talk to fundamentally Sri Lankan Airlines or Air India to actually book that, and then it's going to fundamentally talk to some hotel to to actually organize the activities for you. And it's going to know that you're a family of 4. It's going to know that you're actually vegetarian. It knows that these are the types of activities you guys like. Okay? And to do so, there needs to be a shared brain. There needs to be a shared memory. There needs to be a shared context that can be shared in a way that something that's closest to you doesn't divulge everything about you to the other make my trip agent. Okay? That is an example of a protocol layer. That's an example of an MCP. Okay? How does that information get transferred? So this space, not MCP, infra and tools, is the single largest layer of investment since ChatGPT, globally. Okay? And what it's expected to be is go from about 57 billion today to around 220 billion by 2030. And one of the things, if you're part of my class, you'll hear I talk about go after large problems, large markets, and where the timing is in your favor, tailwinds. Here's an example. So one of the companies that's worth looking at in this space is Composio. I kept talking about that in my class. What did Composio do? Solve that problem. Solve the problem. They basically came up with an MCP protocol for the world before Claude formalized it. Okay? And just to put this in perspective, when they first launched, for the first about 18 months, they had 0 revenues, okay? But they had unreal developer love on GitHub. Okay? Something like 50,000, 60,000 GitHub stars and counting. So when you build a product in this area, do not expect to get monetization right away because you're laying down the groundwork. Okay? Because you're solving hard problems that are not yet being solved, and you're doing things that do not naturally scale. Okay? But if you own that layer of piping, if you own, as we talk about in my class, the road on which every single person has to travel, then you are the toll collector. It's just a matter of time. That's the bet they did. They became globally one of the largest Series A companies. They got 25 on something like $120 million valuation for still $0 of revenue. Okay? Because they won. They were the market leaders in this space. Okay? And so what are then the opportunities? Okay? The opportunities that exist in this space. So today, if you're going to build an MCP server, okay, you're too late. You're about 2 years too late, and most importantly, Composio just killed you. So don't go there. Okay? What are then the opportunities? The biggest 3 opportunities that I see are, 1, compliance as a service. So this falls under the world of explainability. Okay? Can you understand how do the models behave? And red teaming, when they go rogue, can you actually figure out why and correct it? Okay? Any tools that do that will be valuable. Okay? Number 2, multimodal pipelines, need for infrastructure tooling, especially when you get to a world where context needs to be shared multimodally. No longer just text. Okay? Third area, AI observability, monitoring, and model drift and errors. So observability, understand what's going on. Explainability, explain what's going on. Okay? There's another one here, which I should have added, memory. Okay? Memory. Anybody who's able to provide a better memory that is not model dependent, because all the memory today that you have sits in 2 places. Either the model layer, so you get locked into the proprietary model providers, Claude, Gemini, OpenAI, or it exists at essentially the vector database layer. Okay? But you need to create memory independent of the model, and you need to create a memory faster than the vector databases. If you can build that memory, which people are, so you're about 3 months late, but not too far. Build a better product, you get a chance to get the market share. Okay? And that's what people have built. And why is this important? If I'm going to share 2 agents that are going to talk to each other, or in a world where all the agents are going to talk to each other, then I want a world where memory is brokered by an independent person that I trust. Okay? And if you think about it, if memory is brokered by an independent person, that memory, whoever owns it, becomes the default trust layer of the internet. And if you think about it even more, that company becomes the personalization of the internet because it infinitely understands everything you ever did. That is the opportunity, guys. That's why there's so much excitement in this space. Okay, key considerations. You got to be part of the workflow. Okay, you got to understand, because ultimately for developers to love you, you need to be actually helping them to love you. You need to be part of the developer workflow. Number two, you need to actually have lots of developer love. Okay, which is why open source tooling is the way to go here. Do not build proprietary. If you want to build a product here, it has to be open source. It has to have GitHub love. Okay, thank you. And moats, you got to be the world's expert in this space. You got to be world's expert in this space. You got to build a product that becomes easily adoptable. Okay? And one thing, again, I should have written here, the speed of learning and execution. The Composio guys used to ship every half a day. Not 2-week sprint, half a day sprint. The entire size of the team, 5. Okay? Because the developer love comes when developers raise bugs, or you're able to fix bugs and immediately ship it out again. Okay? That's the name of the game. If you can't do that, don't start a company here. Okay, next. Insights from unstructured data.
A quick question.
Yes.
When you talk about memory,
Yes.
obviously there are a lot of knowledge management systems that hold an enormous trove of memory from a corporate or a company point of view.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't they concentrate the value?
Yeah.
I guess.
So this is basically, think of it as essentially long-term memory versus cache. That's probably the good analogy from our days. So this is cache. I'm referring to cache. And I'm referring to something that you can, in the moment, put in the moment retrieve in order to not sacrifice on latency, but preserve context and still get the job done. And when it needs memory that is longer, then it has to go to some other persistence layer. Yeah? Yeah. Great question. Insights from unstructured data. So where are we? We're about 4 into 7. With me so far? Yes? Make sense? Okay, great. Let's go into insights from unstructured data. I personally am super excited by this. Okay, this is essentially why. Because guys, all the knowledge in the world, all the data in the world that you ever can think of sits at the top of that iceberg. What sits underneath is this. We have never been able to understand this until now. Okay? What do we mean by unstructured data? PDFs, email, Word docs. What does unstructured data mean? Data that cannot be easily put into a persistence layer, a database. Okay? As simple as that. Okay? Until now. So, what's going to happen? Okay, let's first understand the definition. Using AI to extract actionable insights from unstructured sources like text, images, audio, so that tomorrow, in an example like healthcare, you can analyze medical images and notes to improve diagnosis and treatment. You do not need to figure out how do I store this in a database. It's in situ, as is, where is. Okay? And the opportunity here is about a 60 billion today. Industries like legal, healthcare, customer services, compliance want this because 80% of their data is unstructured. Okay? You build a product through AI that can help them make sense of that bottom of that unstructured layer, amazing. But just making sense isn't enough, because what you have to do is to actually figure out a business intelligence layer, something that can actually enable you to gain those insights in an automatic way. So remember, guys, you start with information, data, information, then you get into essentially that's something that you can actually get to as insights. Okay? Just because I understand unstructured data does not mean I can actually form insights. You have to build that logic. Okay? Because now you can understand the unstructured data. Okay? You have to figure out how can you do this at real time, because the data doesn't become stale very quickly. You have to figure out how do you build powerful visualization, because some of this unstructured data has never been understood before. So you have to figure out what is the mental model of your customer in that domain. So how do you make sense if I'm in the healthcare industry vis-a-vis if I'm in the legal industry? Okay? So your job is to make that easier for there to be a sale. Otherwise, you're just giving now access to the unstructured data. Data is still data. Insight is gold. Visualization of insight is platinum. Okay? This is why companies like Glean are so valuable. This is why Perplexity is going after this space. Okay? And so the things that are most important, how do you build this? You got to make sure that you fundamentally still understand privacy. Is that going to matter? To some extent, it's going to matter. Okay? And so you have to figure out how can I still take a piece of data that is potentially confidential, potentially has commercially sensitive or personally sensitive data, and still be able to make sense of it without losing context or personalization or have latency. That's why it's a hard problem. Right? And there are companies here that are doing this. I talked about this in my class. Protecto.ai is a phenomenal example of a company that's doing this. Okay? Market, $1 of revenue, market is willing to pay you 400x in valuation. Because it's so hard. Now is that moment. Okay? And also, importance of vertical fine-tuning and really deeply understanding. This is the fundamental insight layer. If you don't understand that data and map it to the business context, it is not insight. It is still garbage in, garbage out. Okay? And the winner is going to be the person who can actually build the best pipelines to understand the data, ingest the data, and have the highest quality of that data, and be able to have the highest quality label of that data. Why is Scale AI so unreal? And why did Zuck fall in love and actually put in a huge investment for this reason? Okay? All right. Let's go. We are in the home straight. Okay? 3 more to go. Okay? AI, system of record, and AI experience or agentic experience. So what's going on here? So fundamentally, in enterprises, what's been happening is the system of record, okay, which is what is, in the case of Salesforce, all of the sales that you've been doing, okay, in the case of Workday, employee information, that system of record, that source of truth has been sitting at the application layer, okay? That is actually a problem, because tomorrow I cannot fire that application. If I do, the data goes with that application. Okay? Then a fundamental piece of innovation happened in around 2010s, early 2010s, which is you started getting a system of engagement, a layer of engagement, which was able to probe into those systems of record that existed in these ERP systems and CRM systems, and we're able to show it as part of messages or as part of your engagement through likes of Notion and Slack. That's how they made their money. That's why they existed. Okay? But now there's a new opportunity. System of intelligence. Okay? A layer that sits even on top of all of your engagement layer, that can actually understand and make sense. Think of it as a layer of consciousness that exists in your organization that knows every single decision that was ever made, every single action that was ever taken, every single meeting that you ever took. Okay? And it does not need to persist it in any single application. It does not care whether that information came from Slack, Notion, Workday, or Salesforce. It understands. That's the system of intelligence. Okay? That is the new AI system of record. And what happens here, let's define it. AI system of record are core business platforms that are redesigned from the ground up with AI at the center. Unlike legacy systems, with AI layered on top of these, they have the ability to capture the data automatically, generate the insights natively, and enable you to query it in the way you like it. An example of this is AI First CRM. A salesperson can today ask the question, hey, show me my top at-risk deals and draft me an email, and the whole thing takes care of itself. You do not need to go to that CRM. You do not need to go to Salesforce and query, what are my top risks? You do not need to go to that email and try and understand, please draft me this. You don't then need to go to Superhuman or whatever to redraft this, or Grammarly to check. No. Okay? If you go back to basically one of the slides I showed earlier, all of this has been possible because of goal optimization at the model layer. You're focusing on outcomes. And if I link it back to some other slide I said, now you're basically going to go after outcome-based pricing. Okay? And so the market opportunity here is today at least $25 billion. Where? CRM, ERP, and IT support management. So rebuild. Do not, if tomorrow you're going to build a new Salesforce, don't build it the way Salesforce is today. And what are all the major focus areas? Ways in which you can do autonomous workflows. We talked about this. Way in which you're able to get structured data generation from natural input, the way you speak. Okay? And this is fundamentally going anytime, anywhere. If you have the ability to redesign a fundamental application, then do it this particular way. And what is most important is to, again, think about from the previous section, think about both structured and unstructured, and think about how do you organize this in order to make decisions, and how do you, again, once again, make sure there's feedback loops that are provided. Again, why? Because reinforcement learning matters, because these things aren't perfect. Last two, on-device AI or edge AI. Okay? So I'm sure many of you heard about a year and a half ago about Apple Intelligence. Okay? It does not matter to me whether you love Apple or you have an Android device. It does not matter to me whether you think Apple today is going to win or not. But fundamentally, you got to give it to Apple to have thought through the architecture of how this is going to work. Let me explain. What's going to happen is, in the world, in the future, there is going to be a personal intelligence system that is going to sit on the edge. What do we mean by the edge? By the endpoint. What do we mean by the endpoint? The nearest endpoint you can think of is your mobile phone. Okay? It can also be your wristwatch. Okay? It can also be your car. All are considered endpoints. All are considered essentially edge devices. So what's going to happen is that it's going to fundamentally orchestrate for a set of inputs that are going to come from essentially Siri voice, some writing tools, or something, some apps. These are all apps, okay? And it's going to basically all of the model layer and the compute layer and the inferencing layer and the RAG layer are all going to sit fundamentally on the device, okay? And what's going to happen is, as and when it needs it, it will basically make the call to the cloud. Why is it fundamentally brilliant? Because, again, for those people who have been part of my class, it's another way of fundamentally creating network effects. Okay? It's another way of saying, Apple can say in the future, hey, app, work with Apple Intelligence because I can protect your privacy. Everything that's happening on the phone stays on the phone, and I will provide the layer that can communicate with other apps or any other cloud model providers. That way, I take out ChatGPT, I take out OpenAI, I take out every other player. Brilliant. Whether they execute, that's the next question. But brilliant piece of architecture. Okay? So fundamentally, what's going on here is that on-device intelligence is paramount. You have to process data closest to the source, i.e. the device, and complement with the cloud. What matters here is those who get privacy, reliability, latency, and efficient use of bandwidth. Okay? That's what matters. If you get that right, you'll win. Okay? And some of the hardest problems to be solved here, these are all research problems. Hopefully, these are all research problems you're solving at the Wadhwani School of Data Science and AI, which is things like few-shot learning. How do you adapt the model to a few labeled samples? Continuous learning with unlabeled data. How do you use unlabeled data to do unsupervised learning? Federated learning for global adaptation, and low complexity on-device learning. These are all incredibly important concepts to nail before you can get edge computing right. So if you're at school, you're doing your bachelor's, master's, PhD, please make sure before you graduate, you've taken classes on these. Because they're going to get very, very relevant when you come out the other side. And so, definition, I'll run through this quickly. Running AI models, okay, directly on the mobile or the edge. Example, a smartphone which can make decisions on your favorite Italian restaurant and book it using local data apps. Guys, there's a flip side to this. Okay, I talked about the risk of disintermediation. So tomorrow, I'm the same Make My Trip. But if Apple Intelligence kicks off, and bet your bottom dollar Google is also going to have another version of this called Google Intelligence or something, then fundamentally, what is the role of an app? Because I'm not going to even see that app. I'm not even going to know there is an app called Make My Trip. All I know is Siri, book this trip. I have no idea who it is calling, what data it's actually using, and how does it do the work on the other side? Is there a risk of disintermediation? You bet your absolute bottom dollar yes. So therefore, I don't know. I don't know if you Make My Trip, what do you do? I would have to think you have to own, fundamentally, the relationship with your customer. But that relationship with your customer today happens on the phone. You hire the phone, not Make My Trip. You discover Make My Trip through the phone, which is why the race to owning the edge matters. Okay, market opportunity today, massive. Okay, across phones, wearables, automotive, industrial IoT, mainly driven by privacy, latency, and cost efficiency. Those are all the considerations. Major focus areas, basically it's about model orchestration, because there's going to be not one model that rules them all, there's going to be multiple models. There will be multiple language models, there will be multiple diffusion models, multiple voice models, multiple fit-for-purpose models, one for health, one for your cooking, one for your learning of English. And you're going to have to orchestrate on the device across all of this and make sense. Okay? And essentially, I'll let you read for the interest of time. I'm just going to move on about some of the considerations that you need to be thinking of. Hopefully, these things, by what we've discussed so far, is fairly straightforward. Last one brings it all together. We'll finish on a high. Okay? Which is real-world models, not the same as physical AI. Physical AI is a subset of real-world models. What do we mean by real-world models? Models that fundamentally change the world around us. Physical AI is basically models that are essentially tuned to help robots to move things around us, or humanoids. Okay? So what's going on? Well, fundamentally, we're going to see a culmination of many things. We're going to see infrastructure evolution, where energy and information and intelligence is what is premium. We're going to see the evolution of AI development from generative AI to agentic AI to physical AI. And we're going to see in the next 30 to 50 years of this massive AI supercycle, where we started with essentially, we're disrupting the digital workforce through our generative AI. We're going to create agents that's going to disrupt the AI factories and fundamentally build infrastructure intelligence at every layer, which then allows us to fundamentally impact every single industry around. Okay? So this is where I would be investing a lot of my energy and time today, because this is going to take at least another 3 to 5 years before time to market. Okay? And what's going to be important is you're going to be able to fundamentally collect data about the world. It could be drugs, drug discovery, collect protein data. It could be about the Charles Munger and Warren Buffett financial trading data. It doesn't matter. It could be sensory data on oil rigs. You're going to collect the world's most niche data set, hard to get data set, okay? And you're going to be able to get, you're going to be able to simulate and reason about physical things, okay? About the real world that exists around you, and environments and behaviors, and fundamentally integrating physics, time, causality, spatial, and temporal reasoning. So you're going to be able to deal with friction, deal with gravity, deal with time, deal with history, deal with memory. So fundamentally, you're going to start dealing with the world. This is going to be an important nut to crack for AGI or SGI. Okay? An example is a digital twin that optimizes wind turbine performance by creating a virtual replica of a physical turbine, allowing for real-time monitoring, simulation, analysis of its operation. This enables proactive maintenance, enhanced energy production, and overall efficiency improvements. Okay? If you collect the world's most, let's take an example, Formula One cars, they go through wind turbines. If you collect all the data of the various car types, car materials, and car angles, and you collect that proprietary data, and you're able to impact how future cars are made, welcome. You're now basically starting to crack this problem. And the market here today is at least a $50 billion market, just on AI with physics, simulation, real-time decision making. Okay? And some of the areas are around digital twins we talked about, physics-informed machine learning, multimodal modeling of the real world. This is the turbine and simulator. Synthetic data connection, because bet your bottom dollar you're not going to have all the data. Okay? And so what's going to happen is it's all about accuracy. It's all about usefulness of that data. If you can't get it fundamentally right, you won't win. And it's about how do you actually integrate with existing tools. Because the world is not going to integrate with you. You're going to have to integrate with existing tools. These sensors in the oil rigs, you're going to have to integrate with them in order to change those oil rigs. Okay? How well you do that is going to be important to win in this space. All right. So with that, we've actually talked about all of the 7 key AI trends. Hopefully you got a sense of why they're exciting, what would you build, how would you build it, and what would you need to believe in order to be successful. I just want to wrap up by saying, before we go to questions, this whole thing is part of some of the classes we run in the AI and entrepreneurship class, run at the Wadhwani School. The current one is just coming up to an end tomorrow, but we will put a new one, so feel free to join. We'll discuss much more of this and more in this class. And with that, I will pause, open it up for questions, and thank you so much for your time. Yes, sir. Okay, use this. Hello? Hello, can you hear me? Great. Okay, yes.
Sir, so first of all, it was a great session. And sir, I am actually building AI agents for CRM and ERP, which you also showed over there.
Yes.
So currently I am starting with accounting, mostly Tally, which is used mostly by all CS all over India. So like what will be your recommendation? Because I am about to launch and I am thinking I can give like free version for quite a few months or something like that. So for someone who is just like I have had a startup before, it didn't work out. So for someone who is building in this enterprise AI, so what will be like your recommendation?
Okay, well, first of all, thank you. And I also want to applaud the fact that you're celebrating that your startup did not work out. That's a start.
Oh, that was previous one.
I know, but I'm just saying to you that that is still an important part of being successful in your current startup, recognizing that everything is about learning towards the future. The main thing I would say to you, when you build enterprise software, the most important thing is identify your ICP, okay, ideal customer profile. Be very, very clear that this, or initial customer profile, this is the person I'm trying to build for, this is the problem they actually have, and if it's about, which area did you say, Tally? Accounting?
Yes, so in India, most of the CS, they use a software called Tally, like 70% of them.
Yeah.
And even in my relation, there are CS.
Yeah.
So I went to their office, I talked with them, I made reports and stuff like that.
So Tally is an accounting software. It does chart of accounts, yes, as one of the starting parts, and I know that software well. So the question for me is, if you're going to build a new chart of accounts in an AI-first way, what would that be?
So I am not building a new Tally kind of thing. I am building an AI agent which will do stuff over there and which will help them boost their productivity.
Yeah.
Like now in coding, we are using AI like that for like vibe accounting.
Vibe accounting,
yeah.
I love it. Wow, we're making up terms here, vibe accounting. So if it's vibe accounting, then the first question is, how do I get hold of the source data? The difference in vibe coding is that there is no data at the first place. I can just prompt and code something and create something. But in accounting, it's all about accuracy. So there has to be a plugin into the fundamental source of chart of accounts of the company, its costs, its revenues, its accounts payable, its accounts receivable. And you need to figure out a way to understand all of this and create a new system of record that captures all of that information, that you can then essentially have the ICP, the person who you've identified as the main customer, can vibe, can basically prompt, show me the profitability of this week compared to last week. Show me the growth of last week versus this week. And most importantly, show me what if I spend X dollars more today than I do last week, will it actually burn my cash in the bank sooner or so? So you can start doing future prediction and things like that's the value. So things that were not possible before is what I would tackle.
So mostly it is like saving the time and saving the money. Like lot of they are hiring people who can just do the entries.
Yes.
So over there they will save the money. And even accuracy. Lot of times
that's right.
When humans are doing the thing, they get confused.
That's right. I would start building it as a co-pilot.
Yeah, that is what I have built actually.
And then start thinking about autopilot. Where can you actually completely take away the need for humans?
Yeah.
But great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great question. Yes, there's a question at the front. I don't know if it's going to get captured in the video. I think that's why they want to do it.
So I have a couple of questions. The first one is, what's your view on building AI native applications versus embedding AI into existing workflows?
Yeah, I think we've talked about that in our class a lot. So let's define what the difference is. Okay, so AI native applications, yes?
So I just want to add one thing to
that question.
Yeah.
Wow, before I answer, there's actually an iteration of that question. We are in the vibe question world. Go ahead.
So also, how can AI augmented products be used in the same sphere?
Yeah, let's define basically a few terms maybe before, because some of the folks may not have been part of the class. So fundamentally, AI native or AI first applications have at its core some proprietary model or adaptation of a model with some proprietary data and a whole bunch of logic that has made it very relevant to the use case and business logic at the top. So think of Perplexity. Perplexity it's sitting on top of multiple models, but it's also got constantly building its own model. And then it's basically got some proprietary data on certain types of queries that it can outshine anybody else. And then it has been trained on how to create the world's best answer engine, which is why it looks very different to Google search as an example or ChatGPT. And then it is trying to make sure it works on your business logic. Where are you calling from and what problem are you trying to solve? So that part, it is not relevant. It's a horizontal platform, but everything else, if you gate it right, and if you nail each of those layers of model, data, logic that sits within towards, and then also the business logic, if you get all those four right, then that is basically an AI native application. If any of those you essentially are not building yourself, but actually borrowing, in other words, you're actually using a Claude model and putting a wrapper on top, or you're building a Claude model and actually building some business logic on top, that is AI enabled. Okay, that's an example of difference. In this particular world, the way I would do, especially of many of the things that we talked about, I don't think it's as important to nail the model layer as first, as much as it is to nail the proprietary data layer. If you can figure out a proprietary data layer and then essentially fine-tune your model for the particular business logic or function that you're going after, then over a period of time, just through usage loops or learning loops, you can actually figure out how to actually get much more of a proprietary model built at the end. So that's how I would build the app.
Yeah, the second is also related. What signals or points do you look for to determine if an enterprise AI startup is truly scalable beyond a few star or lighthouse customers?
Yeah. So fundamentally, this is one of the reasons why. So the question that was asked is, how do you make sure that enterprise problem or a customer that you're building is truly scalable? I go after fundamentally, the first question I ask is, how big is the TAM? Okay, target addressable market. How big is the market that you're going after, and then how many people within that market, i.e., enterprises, share the same problem? So in this case of the spend flow, procurement is a procurement is a procurement. It does not matter whether it's a health procurement versus an education procurement at IIT. They're trying to go after the most horizontal of problems in the most vertical space, which is procurement. So it's a horizontal solution they can build for every procurement function that exists. And so their ICP is essentially the chief procurement officer. Okay? And ultimately, the customer who buys them, the difference between a customer and a user, one buys your product, one uses your product. The person who buys your product is the CFO. The person who uses your product is the procurement team and the procurement officer. So they built that product there, and it was very obvious. If they nailed it, then essentially it is possible to repeat that product across every single procurement team, across every single industry. So that's what we look for.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes.
When you were discussing services software, I think you went over manufacturing outsourcing. That was a $2.8 trillion market, 85% with 85% salary TAM. So it's a $2.4 trillion salary TAM market. Can you expand on what manufacturing outsourcing is? I can understand manufacturing, robotic AI, I assume, but manufacturing outsourcing, as in supply chain, stuff like that?
It's exactly that, supply chain. So think about, in order to make a single car, what is actually happening is each and every single of the n number of parts is constantly not produced by the same Ford in the US. It is actually going across so many different geographies, so many across part suppliers who are actually building some of the pieces, and they've outsourced it to a combination of human and machines to produce those parts and then bring it in. Incidentally, this is the reason why the US tariff situation is a massive problem, because every time the parts are going back and forth, you're having to pay tariffs, which is why most of the manufacturers are like really not happy at the moment in the US with the tariff situation. Put that to a side. So that is what we're talking about. Basically, any single piece of manufacturing, be it an oil rig, be it a car part, be it even a vacuum cleaner, be it any consumer goods or manufacturing goods, needs parts to be constructed by different people. Those people are sometimes humans. In this case, large part of it turns out in manufacturing are humans still, and only very few has actually gotten automated like cars, where the final assembly is done by the robotics, but most of the parts are done by still humans.
Okay, so it's this AI agents that can connect a lot of OEMs, for example.
Correct.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Great question. Okay, we have a couple more. Okay, sure. I'm conscious we are over the time. If you need to leave, I won't feel offended.
Sir, I'm trying to create a agentic system that can do CAD work.
Yes.
And so what would be a recommendation to proceed in this area? Like currently I'm trying to integrate agentic AI using AutoCAD.
Yeah. So I would say to you the market is not ready yet for horizontal products versus vertical products, okay, in AI. So a CAD for the sake of a CAD will not work. You need to go into computer-aided design for a particular area, like, for example, car manufacturing, or, for example, computer-aided manufacturing of a mobile phone. So the more vertical you go, the more niche problem you're trying to solve. That is your initial wedge. And can you do it in a way that starts off as a co-pilot, so you're actually not replacing the human, but actually increasing their productivity and creativity. And then over a period of time, can you actually get more and more rid of the things that are not really needed by the humans? And so can you autopilot it?
Yeah, currently, in the internship we are doing, we are trying to create how we can automate creating the layouts for battery energy storage system plants.
Great, 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 awesome. So a couple of things I would start thinking about is, as I said, go niche, go vertical for that problem space, and then start thinking about how to make it AI native. So can you start to think about collecting all of the proprietary data that's going to make you build a better problem, better solution, then if I can find another person who's as qualified as you going after the same problem, will they actually beat you to the market? So what is proprietary? What is differentiating? And what is defensible matters? This is one of the things we study in our class. That's another thing I would start thinking about. Awesome. Thank you. Great question. I think it was...
just a brief question. How do you see the compliance and regulatory aspects plays out?
I think that's a fantastic question. I think in AI, I think what's happening is regulation. Let's take each one on its own merits, compliance and regulation. I don't think there is a compliance standards yet in the market, and it's defined by regulatory bodies. But regulatory bodies still do not know yet how to regulate AI. The furthest ahead is Europe, and they've always been ahead, be it DMA, be it GDPR from back in the day. In the US, there is fundamentally, whichever way you're politically leaning, there has been a lot of pressure to deregulate AI for now because it has to be unconstrained for innovation. That's where the conversation is currently happening. So I think we are going to see over time regulation, but I do not see global regulation. I see regional regulation, and I see each country governing mainly for protectionism. So making sure that US actually regulates US mainly for ensuring nobody else can come and take US's market. I will be around afterwards if you need to chat. Let's just take one final. Can I go with somebody who's actually not in my class just to give somebody else a chance? Yes, sir. Yourself.
So, I actually have a serious question, but I want to put it in a funnier tone. So the thing is that we have been discussing so far about how AI can be used, but have you ever thought of safety as a trend? Because you see, there is a possibility that people can create something like Entity from the Tom Cruise movie, right? So we can't actually expect Ethan Hunt or Tom Cruise to come and save us, right? So have you ever thought that, that is also a trend which we can sort out for, or we can, look out for something like guardrails or something and build a kind of system for around it?
I could not.
Actually, I want to add to that question. That was the last question I was going to ask. Is that amongst your 7 key areas, how come security wasn't one?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great question. I think the where we are at the moment is we are still in the layer of explainability and observability. Okay, and we have not yet reached maturity of deployment of AI applications that we can then start to think about how do you have the continuous loop of detection, protection, remediation, and continuous monitoring. So we're not there yet because no two AI implementations at the moment are even the same. And so the market has not matured yet to start thinking about standardization, and especially when it comes to security. So I, for one, we talk about this in our class, in fact, yesterday, which is about responsibility in AI. And there are many threads to pull. I think the one that you pulled is actually currently my hope and prayer is that if we can actually nail our understanding of why does the AI behave the way it does, can we actually provide sufficient control mechanisms back to the user when it starts to not just hallucinate, but fundamentally get it wrong, and figure out not only how does it benefit from the reinforcement learning, but fundamentally break chain, fundamentally kill it at a point where it is gone. Like the way, for example, in the world of social media, which I came from at Twitter, when the model starts recommending things that are getting you into the echo chamber, we then pull controls back to the user to actually stop recommending anything at the first place. We need to start thinking about such controls. But today, the market is still in, let me understand, and then let's figure things out. Whether that's right or wrong, it's not for me to tell. I'm just merely pointing out as to where the market is.
Okay, so let's thank Lakshmi again.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody. Great to see you all. Thank you.
Oh, she needs support.